Hollywood has produced some of the greatest movies ever made, but one mistake cost hundreds of millions of dollars and changed the movie industry forever. Good morning, guys, and welcome to Flop Files.
To really wrap our heads around how an ego-driven disaster could literally obliterate an entire major studio, we can't just look at one bad day on a movie set. No, we have to rewind. We need to dig into the very foundations of the film industry itself. You see, an unstoppable combo of government intervention and rapidly changing technology essentially forced the most powerful executives on Earth into a desperate, terrified corner. This isn't just a story about a bad movie, it's a story of survival that ended up breeding unimaginable, catastrophic hubris.
Section 1. The Golden Age.
Okay, so back during the Golden Age, a few massive studios, like Paramount, ran an ironclad monopoly. They didn't just make the movies, they owned the physical theater chains where they played. It was a completely closed loop of guaranteed profit. But then, bam, a 1948 Supreme Court antitrust ruling shatters this whole system, forcing studios to sell off their lucrative theaters. And this massive loss of predictable revenue happened at the exact same time a terrifying new rival popped up in American living rooms: television. Suddenly, people could be entertained for free, without ever leaving the house. Within just 2 short years, TV practically cut theater attendance in half. The studios were in an absolute panic. They desperately needed a lifeline.
Section 2. Bigger, riskier bets.
So how do you lure audiences off their comfy couches? The answer was spectacle. The studios knew they had to offer something a tiny low-resolution black and white TV box simply couldn't touch. So they went huge. They rolled out ultra-widescreen formats like CinemaScope, stretching the image to completely wrap around your peripheral vision. They ditched those cheap, painted backdrops for authentic, on-location filming in places like Rome and Egypt. They packed the screen with a literal cast of thousands of extras and approved staggering, totally unprecedented budgets. And you know what? For a little while, this strategy of overwhelming epic movies actually worked. But beneath the surface, it set the stage for a deeply ingrained culture of mind-blowing financial risk.
Section 3. The Costly Decision.
Take 20th Century Fox president Spiros P. Skouras, for example. His studio was struggling so badly that they literally had to sell off their legendary backlot to a high-rise developer, the area we now know as Century City in LA, just to keep the lights on. Desperate for a mammoth hit, Skouras gambled everything on the 1963 epic Cleopatra. It started as a modest $2 million project, but quickly descended into absolute madness. The production design became so obsessively detailed that the Roman Forum set they built was actually 1.5 times larger than the actual historical Forum in Rome. Between Elizabeth Taylor's record-breaking $1 million salary, the wild tabloid scandals of her affair with Richard Burton, and a total lack of budget supervision, it became a runaway train. Fox was pushed to the absolute brink of bankruptcy, having to halt all other productions just to feed this one monstrous movie.
Get this! Adjusted for today's inflation, the final cost of Cleopatra comes to a jaw-dropping $440 million. It's a staggering sum. And they earned back less than half of that during its initial theatrical run. It was a terrifying precedent, proving that out-of-control productions could quickly spiral into the hundreds of millions and threaten to destroy entire companies. But incredibly, the industry was about to forget that lesson entirely.
Section 4. The Disastrous Production.
And let's fast forward to the late 1970s. The old studio system had morphed again. Now, executives had handed total control over to a new generation of star directors, ushering in the new Hollywood auteur era. The director's artistic vision was basically absolute law. Enter Michael Cimino and his gritty western, Heaven's Gate. Cimino was fresh off winning 2 Oscars for The Deer Hunter. His pitch? Incredibly reasonable, an $11.6 million budget for a frontier epic. But the reality? United Artists gave Cimino a blank check. Blinded by his recent Oscar glory, they handed him complete creative control and zero oversight, steering themselves right into impending doom. The red flags were immediate, and they were wild. By the 6th day of filming, the project was already 5 full days behind schedule. Let that sink in. Cimino's maniacal perfectionism completely took over. He'd reportedly wait hours just for a specific cloud to roll into the frame. He shot over 1.3 million feet of film. That's roughly 220 hours of footage for one single movie. Crazy reports of extreme authoritarianism poured out of the remote Montana set, actors doing 50 takes for basic background shots. And during post-production, Cimino allegedly changed the locks on the editing room doors, literally barring studio execs from seeing a single frame until his cut was done. As costs skyrocketed to nearly 4 times the original budget, the whole industry held its breath. Would audiences actually show up to justify this absolute madness?
Section 5. Hundreds of millions lost. If you're enjoying the story, subscribe to Flop Files and share this explainer with a movie fan. Now let's talk about the financial ruin, because it was absolute. The final production cost of Heaven's Gate ballooned to an unbelievable $44 million, which is about $140 million in today's money. Yet after all that blood, sweat, and millions of feet of film, the total domestic box office gross was a pathetic $3.5 million. It was a complete and utter rejection by the public. The money didn't just bomb, it evaporated into thin air, leaving United Artists holding the bag for one of the most disastrous box office returns in the history of cinema.
Critic Joe Queenan perfectly summed up the massive fallout when he noted it lost so much money it literally drove a major American studio out of business. And the critics? They were merciless. Reviewers brutally panned the film, heavily mocking the absurd indulgences Cimino left in, like an excruciating 5 minutes of uninterrupted roller skating fiddle playing. Seriously, or the endlessly bloated Harvard waltz scenes that dragged the runtime to nearly 4 hours. Audiences stayed far, far away. The negative buzz was deafening, sealing its fate as a legendary disaster.
Section 6. The industry reacts. Inside the executive boardrooms, the panic was immediate. After a disastrous world premiere in November 1980, the backlash was so incredibly fierce that United Artists actually pulled the movie from theaters. A shorter, heavily recut version was desperately shoved out in April 1981, hoping to salvage something, but it bombed all over again. The corporate owner of United Artists, the Transamerica Corporation, was so horrified by the PR nightmare that they made a drastic call. They abandoned film production entirely. By late 1981, they sold off the historic, prestigious United Artists to MGM. I mean, think about that. A single, out-of-control movie completely wiped an iconic independent studio off the map.
Section 7. The industry changes forever.
The spectacular failure of Heaven's Gate practically assassinated the new Hollywood auteur era overnight. The days of unchecked artistic freedom and blank check budgets, dead and gone. Power was ruthlessly stripped from visionary directors and handed firmly back to the executives in suits, officially kicking off the blockbuster era. Studios now demanded strict, uncompromising budget oversight. They completely pivoted their strategies to prioritize high-concept IP, ideas that were easily marketable, easily understood in a single sentence, and highly profitable. Things like Jaws and Star Wars. The freewheeling, indulgent excesses of the 1970s film set were buried for good.
Section 8. Lessons learned. So, Hollywood drafts a strict new playbook to make sure this level of financial ruin never happens again. Step 1. Prioritize established franchises and recognizable intellectual property way above original ideas. Step 2. Rein in those rogue directors with heavy corporate oversight. No more locked editing room doors, right? And Step 3. Treat movies strictly as corporate investments governed by profit margins, not just pure art. The industry transformed into a highly risk-averse machine for the next 40 years, trading the era of the visionary artist for the era of the spreadsheet.
Section 9. Could it happen again?
Which brings us to today. And honestly, the warning signs flashing across the industry right now are eerily familiar. Demand is plummeting among younger viewers who have endless digital alternatives occupying their time, like scrolling TikTok or playing immersive console games. We're seeing the total cratering of mid-budget films at the box office, while streaming services are aggressively scaling back their massive purchasing sprees. The market is completely saturated. Does this sound familiar? The parallels to the 1950s, when TV first threatened the supremacy of movie theaters, are actually striking.
And just like in the 1950s, the response today is often to just panic and double down on massive bloated franchise budgets, desperately hoping sheer spectacle will save the day. It leaves us with a pretty provocative question. Is the modern streaming era making the exact same mistakes of the past? Will an over-reliance on $200 million mega budgets eventually lead to another catastrophic collapse of a major Hollywood studio? Because history shows us, time and time again, that whenever Hollywood gets forced into a corner, their gamble on pure spectacle often borders on self-destruction.
Hollywood is built on dreams, but sometimes those dreams become incredibly expensive mistakes. The biggest failures often teach the biggest lessons. Thanks for watching Flop Files.